Hello, my beautiful souls, both light and dark. I have recorded this immediately after prologue, so I don't know yet how many of you commented. I hope it's a lot. And of course, yesterday was my first commentary. Yes, answering all of your questions. So, I hope you enjoy the proper beginning of the story, chapter 1. And of course, sit, relax, and listen to my voice as I tell you my humble add-on to the fantasy pantheon of the world. Enjoy! Chapter 1: The Devil's Grave. For the saints, that centuries passed in magical splendor, while the rest of the world was left with miserable remnants. Many practices were forgotten, and even more proved too difficult to subsequent generations to learn. Without its holy protectors, the order weakened, but still towered in strength over the common people. The defenders of the light have unofficially placed themselves above the rest of humans and other races. As the closest servants of God's envoys, they considered themselves the only ones worthy of using their gifts. However, there were too few of them, and without the support of angels, they were too weak to wage worldwide wars. Over the years and the development of civilization, old conflicts have become forgotten. Alliances and settlements were made, and relative peace reigned in there. Its inhabitants became more enlightened. Art and philosophy developed, and kings were replaced by councils and government, where the will of the whole was put above individuals. The gods, although not forgotten, lost their former obedience, and the war with demons ceased to be mentioned. However, the magic of the angels of Divinis and the demons of Acherus had already permeated the land, water and air. A natural consequence of this was the increasingly frequent birth of creatures whose fate was intertwined with magic from the very beginning. Their discovery over 600 years ago attracted the interest of the armored. Those beings appeared mainly among elves and halks, as by nature they were races extremely susceptible to magic. However, it was difficult to detect because they lived as far from humans as possible, so the saints focused on the human race. The main reason for the Order's interest was the fact that these children of magic bore some resemblance to demons. Just like them, they had certain innate abilities, such as speed, strength, heightened senses, and other much more unique talents. Telekinesis, the power over fire, and polymorphy are just a few of them. No wonder the saints reacted violently to them. They observed, recruited, or imprisoned them if necessary. Many of these unfortunate people had to go into hiding, excommunicated by society and their families. They sought refuge all over the world. Some of those places were larger and more widely known, while others were accessible only to those who knew where to look for them. The basement of the ruined church of Sainte Marianne in Dijon, in the country of Parquet, belonged to these types of shelters. Although the temple's glory days were gone, its view was still breathtaking. Soaring towers, high walls, and beautiful stained glass windows were covered in soot, moss, and various types of vegetation. Like a haunted castle, it was shrouded in horror and had many terrifying stories associated with it. No ordinary mortal with even a shred of common sense dared to explore what the mossy walls concealed. Especially, no one thought to look under the altar in search of goddess knows what and delve into the corridors hidden beneath it. There, at the very bottom, was the Devil's Grave, the place that served as a shelter for those marked by magic, and at the same time an inn where you could not only eat well, but even rent a room. Its founder and manager was an elderly man called simply the innkeeper by his guests, a simple nickname for someone who, for obvious reasons, values privacy. His guests also had something to be proud of. Sometimes they introduced themselves with such fancy names and titles that many of the people gathered in grave burst into laughter and immediately hit the floor after falling off a stool. Example? Horace, the greatly beautiful, or Vimiko, the squirrel whisperer, also known as the hamster lady. In her case, the jokes didn't last very long. Every guy loses his vigor when a mentally unstable rodent called Vicky gets into their pant leg. Representatives of nations from almost all of Dere appeared here, and despite cultural and linguistic differences, it was one of the few places where the oppressed could feel a sense of community. It was already late evening. The sun had long gone to sleep below the horizon when the church of Saint Marianne was approached by a large man in a dark, ash-grey leather jacket over a blouse, worn canvas pants, heavy military boots, and long black hair reaching down to his shoulders. Vincent Piego stood for a moment in the shade of the nearby trees, examining a temple now bathed in moonlight. After a while, he took the first step and confidently moved towards the entrance. He quickly found himself at the huge, heavy gate hiding the secrets of this dark place. He leaned on one of the wings and pushed it. For a man of his stature, it was like moving a bed. The gates opened with a long, loud wail, and as soon as the newcomer let them go, they immediately returned to their original place and slammed shut with a loud bang. Echoes bounced off the blackened bricks that made up the walls and vaults. Once it quieted down, the man looked around the still beautiful interior. He walked between the benches, staring at the floor in silence. For decades, thousands of people had been offering their prayers to the goddess here, and now there was only deafening silence, broken by the echoing footsteps of the newcomer. He moved slowly and carefully looked at each piece of architecture. Blackened walls, broken stained glass windows, rotting pews, and heavy smell of stale rainwater dripping through the cracked vault made up a gloomy, repulsive image of a chapel that seemed to have been dead for years. When he reached the altar, he leaned against it and examined it carefully. It was damp and cold, covered with moss and dirt that has been left on his hands. He crouched down and placed his hand on a small, inconspicuous-looking stone that sank into the altar under the pressure of his head. The heavy marble shuddered and shifted, making a high-pitched sound of stone slabs rubbing against each other. The visitor saw stairs hidden in the darkness, and a musty smell wafted into his face. Even though the descent was old and wore down, on the way down Vincent found no trace of mold, moss, or cobwebs. Someone obviously cleaned there often. He climbed down the steps without hesitation, his path illuminated only by the small sphere of light conjured up in front of him. Goddess knows how deep he was, but in a few moments he reached the end of the stairs. He stopped in front of a wall of solid rock with a hand-shaped indentation. He lined his hand with it, and after just a few seconds the wall shook. Immediately, the corridor was filled with all sorts of sounds from a bustling bar. Vincent grabbed the handle and, for a change, easily opened the simple wooden door, then stepped inside. He was struck with the smell of many dishes, mixed with incense and tobacco. The pub, full of people, was decorated in an outdated style. Simple chairs at wooden round tables, walls made of stones, flimsy candlesticks attached haphazardly, far too sparsely to properly illuminate the entire room, and an old, dusty chandelier in the very center of the ceiling, blackened by the ever-burning candles. This is the Devil's Grave. At the first glance, it was impossible to understand everything that was happening in the room. Some guests were drinking heavily and laughing loudly. Others were trying to focus on their books and notes over a cup of hot tea. A kind of magical possibilities show was taking place at one of the tables. Someone was levitating above the counter, and someone else was betting with his friends whether they could stab him in the hand, which turned out to be as hard as steel. Vincent walked up to the counter, still looking around the innkeeper's place. He carefully observed everyone and everything that was happening around him. After a while, an older man with an unkempt grey beard and disheveled hair approached him. His face was adorned with deep wrinkles and a surly horseshoe mouth. He was dressed in a dirty grey shirt and a white apron stained with sauces and oil. He approached the newcomer and glared at him, then immediately looked energetically over his shoulder. "Hey!" he shouted angrily at the young man trying to sneak away from the premises. "You think I don't see you? Pay up! Or this is the last time I give you a room, you little fart." "Grandpa, have mercy. I can't go back yet, you know that," the boy whined with a pitiful face. However, it seemed to Vincent that it was just a game. "If I show up around the area too soon, they will definitely catch me." "Do I look like a fucking charity to you? You pay or don't come here again, and I don't care about your problems. As for me, you can go dig a hole in the ground and sleep there, as long as it's away from me. One last time I'm asking politely. Pay up!" "I don't have that much," the boy sighed and spread his arms, waiting for the innkeeper's reaction. "Yes?" the old man replied with growing irritation. "You like it here so much and don't want to leave? Now you can work it all off. I invite you to the back room." "But—" "To the back room," the owner repeated and extended his hand towards the unruly customer. As if attracted by a magnet, he dragged his heels across the floor and hit the bar. He went to the back room on his own, with a disconsolate face. The innkeeper snorted and looked back at Vincent. "Are you ordering or admiring my wonderful bar?" he asked dryly. "Beer. Big," Vincent replied, as if nothing unusual had just happened. "With a herb?" "No. No enchantments." The innkeeper walked away, mumbling something under his breath, and soon in front of Vincent there was a mug of beer with a thick layer of foam sticking out of it. The man took a solid sip and sighed, as if in relief. The beer was perfectly chilled and aromatic. The innkeeper could be accused of many things, but he was certainly an honest man, and he never added water to beer or cheated on portions. Vincent turned his back to the counter and started looking around the grave again. Finally, his eyes landed on a group of young people. They were nothing special. 2 girls and 3 young men sat at a round table, sipping their drinks, talking and laughing to each other. They didn't boast of magic or any other special abilities, and yet they caught Vincent's attention. One person in particular. A boy wearing a black coat with a hood hanging from under it, pulled over his head and covering half of his face. He sat quietly, with his arms crossed on his chest, and not making any special contributions to the conversations. You could even think he was sleeping. Only once did Vincent notice the movement of his lips as he uttered 2 or 3 words, followed by a quick smile, signaled by the lifting of one corner of his mouth. However, his companion, a girl with red hair so intense you could swear they're made of little rubies, did not stay silent even for a minute. She talked non-stop to everyone and about everything so loudly that Vincent could hear her even at the bar on the other side of the inn. "I don't know what you mean, Vera," said the red-haired girl. "I just don't know. How do you put up with him? Just look, as if he were dead, zombie boy." "Funny," he responded, and once again showed the group his characteristic smile. Esmeralda was a lively girl with a temperament as fiery as her hair and delicate, innocent features. She had her own opinion on every topic, which she did not give up easily, and for which she was ready to fight fiercely, with words with anyone who dared to question them. She had known her quiet friend for years, ever since he saved her from being unwillingly defiled by a few men. At first, they didn't stick together, but Esmeralda, like everyone else, had some extraordinary abilities. Like a skilled hunter, she remembered the magical nature of every person she met, with an innate gift, and was able to find them almost flawlessly. Following her savior was therefore no problem for her, and it didn't take long before she convinced him that it was better to travel with her than to have a tail all the time. The red-haired beauty caused great jealousy in a grey mouse, Veronica Zurali. Both she and her twin brother, Birmo, were half-elves, so they had many distinctive features that made them similar to their inhuman father. Big green eyes, fair complexion, slightly pointed ears, and slender figures. They always wore similar grey-brown clothes and tied-up blonde hair. It was hard for Veronica to look at the perfectly feminine Esmeralda, so she always tried to show off her intelligence and knowledge of the secret arts. She had an amazing ability to learn and remember facts, just like her brother. Not a spectacular skill, but so useful. It is not known what caused it. Was it some kind of magic, or was it just in both of their blood? Even if it was a natural feature, the magical elven blood allowed them to bypass the grave security. Despite frequent quarrels, Veronica and Esmeralda remained best friends. The topic of the conversation quickly changed, which did not mean the end of the arguments. "Why don't you finally tell me how do you track down magic?" Veronica asked. "How many times do I have to tell you that it is none of your business? I have my ways, and I prefer them to remain a secret." "How stubborn you are. Why don't you realize that this can help us a lot?" "Exactly," Birmo joined in. "You're selfish, that's all. The study of magic is the future, and we are better suited for it than anyone else." "Yes? Maybe if I make an effort and find you in one of the bookstores, secretly reading erotic picture books, as you often do, you will see that I know my abilities well enough." Esmeralda sneered. Laughed the last member of the group, a giant named Tamur, as Birmo blushed. Everyone suspected that big brute of being related to the mythical orcs, even though he himself did not admit it. He had greyish, damaged skin, a bald head and a protruding eyebrow and jaw. Moreover, he was over 2 meters tall and was built like a seasoned lumberjack. Next to the fairer sex, he looked like an ugly troll. However, he was simple-minded and did not care about his appearance. After being teased by Esmeralda, Birmo only hissed nervously. He always did this under stress, hence his nickname, the Snake. He wanted to be called Viper or Cobra, but apparently that decision wasn't up to him. It was easy to make fun of him by calling him Slowworm, which Esmeralda often used. They changed topics, sometimes arguing and sometimes laughing. They recalled old adventures and planned further trips to long-forgotten places to learn the secrets of this world. Vincent stood calmly at the bar and listened. Finally, he moved towards them. He stood at their table with a freshly poured beer and smiled awkwardly. "Yes?" Esmeralda asked reproachfully. "You want something? Because if not, we're in the middle of conversation here." "Indeed I do. Take a seat, if I may." "You may not," the girl replied coldly. "Wait," Veronica blurted out. "I know your face from somewhere, man. You didn't come here to chat, did you?" "Good observation, beautiful elf." "Oh!" The red-haired girl started again. "You're in for a pickup? Sorry, but there are no takers here." You can immediately see who is more observant. Vincent smiled at Veronica. "What was that supposed to mean?" "I'm just saying that your friend guessed my motives better, that's all." "Much exaggeration. I haven't said anything yet." The half-elf blushed. "All right. Enough of this nonsense. Say what you want and get lost," Esmeralda burst out. "Relax. I guess we've started our relationship at the wrong foot. So let me introduce myself. My name is Vincent Piego, and I'm something of an expert in magical history." "I knew I recognized you." Veronica got excited and then turned to her companions. "He is the author of many priceless descriptions of long-forgotten events that, as it turned out, were crucial to the development of magic in Derre. He is a brilliant writer and historian. A hero. You flatter me a lot, miss, but don't overdo it. I am no hero, but rather a devoted follower in the service of the greater good." "And what good is it, if I may ask?" Esmeralda became curious. "Returning magic to humans, of course. The saints have been slapping our hands for far too long and denying us privileges that they selfishly consider their own. I can see by your faces that you also see this problem. Enough of hiding, discrimination and witch hunts." Birmo mused to himself. "Who wouldn't want that?" "No one," the boy in black blurted out. "Oh, I thought you would never speak." Vincent smiled at him, although he only got half a smile in return. "So what, should I stand or will you give me a chair?" At these words, as a gesture of invitation, Esmeralda kicked the leg of a chair that slid out from under the table. "Thank you," the man said and joined the group of friends. "Now that you know me, might you consider giving me your names? Or just a way to address you, since it's so fashionable these days." "My name is Veronica Zurali." The girl immediately jumped up from the chair and extended her hand to him, which he immediately kissed. "And this is Birmo, my brother." "Well, well, well, half-elf twins? You are truly children of the new era, a link between two races." "Yeah, tell that to our human mother," Birmo said with anger in his voice. "Not everyone is ready for such responsibility. What about you, redhead? What do they call you?" "Esmeralda. And don't be fooled into thinking that's my real name." "I don't care." Vincent smiled at her. "Tome." The giant jumped up and shook the man's head, then sat down, adding, "Curto. What about you, dark boy?" There was silence. Everyone looked at their friend and waited for his reaction. After a short while, Veronica couldn't stand it anymore. "He's called Omen," she said with annoyance in her voice. "And he's a zombie." "I'm not," the boy replied briefly. "Now tell me, where do you want to go with us?" "What? How do you know I wanted to ask you for it?" Vincent was amazed. I have my own methods. Veronica moved closer to the still shocked man and said in a whisper, "He talks to dead people." What? Vincent blurted out. Just that, Omen replied calmly. But how is it possible? Are you sure? Do you know what your late uncle was doing on September 18th, 1249th year of the magical era? This was 20 years ago, so how should I know? From me? Vincent didn't even answer. Instead, he just opened his eyes wider and waited for what Omen would say. He was sitting in the attic, looking through his travel souvenirs. Then you came in. You asked about every single thing he took out of the big wooden trunk, and he told you about them. Except for one, a silver amulet in the shape of two overlapping crescent moons, created by Hulks. He said you can take it, but on one condition. Do you remember what it was? Vincent pulled out the amulet in question from under his sweatshirt and stroked its shiny surface, still amazed. I was supposed to discover its history. So I did, but I never boasted about it to him. He died before I returned. A tumor he had known about for a long time. This was my first discovery, after which I decided to pursue it permanently. I would be nothing without him, and I never thanked him for it. You just did, Omen informed him with satisfaction and a smile, once again only the right corner of his mouth. There was silence. Things got a little awkward, so someone had to change the subject. We didn't have to wait long, because it was done by the person most qualified for it. Oh, Omen, Omen, Esmeralda sighed and turned to Vincent. If you ever wonder why his silence doesn't bother us, just remember this moment. That's why we don't wind him up, and I don't advise you to do it either. Are you kidding? This is fascinating. What else can you do? Animals made of wood. Omen sneered. Sorry, sometimes I get carried away, but you have to understand me. Your skills are truly unique. Yes, yes, maybe. Will you finally get to the point? Esmeralda asked. Vincent suddenly became serious. He fell silent for a moment, looking at those sitting at the table. I'm preparing an expedition, he began carefully. Perhaps the most extraordinary and at the same time the most important for all of humanity. Everyone looked at him in disbelief. Omen, do you know what this is? Veronica asked. No. That's good. I am glad I could intrigue you as well. Well, I discovered the burial place of an artifact from over 1,000 years ago. Tell me, my friends, what do you know about the Reaper? Everyone felt anxious. Nobody spoke. Even though so much time had passed since Gabriel defeated him, his name was still able to strike fear into people's hearts. The Reaper. Omen suddenly blurted out. The would-be exterminator of the human race, general of the infernal legions, incarnate of the demonic god of death and sower of misfortune. Don't mention him so openly, and it's for your own good. Many old spirits still howl at the mere sound of his name. Apologize to them from me and tell them that they will soon be compensated. How? Esmeralda interjected. How? Is it not obvious? We will find Gabriel's sword and use it to give the magic to its rightful owners. Are you crazy? Do you want to play with such great forces? I understand that you don't like life, but don't bring the whole world into it. I have to agree with her, Veronica said. You do know that swords magic is at least half demonic in origin. Besides, let's come to terms with the fact that the rightful owners of magic are actually angels and demons. The latter, maybe even more. It's too much for one guy. We were not created to wield such power. That's why I'm looking for help. Do you think you will find it here? Birma asked. Yes, with the right motivation. And the price, of course. Vincent smiled. And what would that price be? And motivation, Omen added. Well, let's begin with the price, for a good start. Vincent took out his notebook and a stylus from the inside pocket of his jacket, scribbled down the proposed amount, then ripped out the piece of paper and placed it in the middle of the table, where everyone could see it. They all leaned in, then looked at him in disbelief. "On head," the man added, which caused a series of smiles among all involved. A total of 4.5 smiles. "Well, well, well," Esmeralda began. "I hope your motivation is equally convincing." "And for me, this is enough," Tamur said suddenly. "You never needed much to be happy. Do you realize how risky it is? How dangerous?" "Veronica, come on," Birmo reassured his sister. "Mr. Piego certainly has a lot left to say." "Yes, of course," he replied without hesitation. "The entire plan, from start to finish, is already prepared." "Then introduce it to us," Omen said on behalf of everyone. "You probably already know where the tomb in which the sword rests is located." "You, Omen, certainly know this." "I know," he replied. "The others too." "That's good. However, not everyone knows that the saints, surprisingly, do not pay due attention to this place. They are overconfident in their security, and they have every right to be. Many people have tried to get it, but no one has seen it yet, since the demon was trapped in it. Even the saints themselves. Why? The wizards of that time created a barrier that no human, elf, or other living creature could overcome. You can use the most powerful explosives known to us to destroy the tomb, but there won't be even a scratch on the 4 walls surrounding the sword. All this so that no one would ever be able to ever glance at the cursed blade. Its power is indescribable. No one has witnessed it, so the only sources of pseudo-information that gives any idea how huge it is are legends. They say that just looking at it leads to madness, Birmo quoted one of them, or that whoever possesses it will not be able to control its power and will die in terrible agony, added Veronica. That's what I'm talking about. A bunch of nonsense intended to scare away anyone who would want to find it, and all invented by the saints. "And by what chance do you know how to get there?" Esmeralda asked. "I have a friend among the saints. He told me everything." "A traitor among the saints?" Birmo was shocked. "I see nothing wrong with helping humanity. By releasing a demon? Who talks about release? I have heard that the angel stone in which the Reaper is locked cannot be destroyed by any human force, so we are not at risk of occasionally releasing it. So how do we get there? Sorry, but that's the only thing I can't tell you until the last minute. You understand, right? I can't tell everyone I meet the details of my plan. You will start boasting about what you have already heard, which would attract saints in the blink of an eye, believe me. However, I trust that our cooperation will also result in mutual trust. When you see with your own eyes that everything I tell you is 100% true and sincere. You will take part in a memorable expedition and will go down in history forever, enriching yourself in the process. Think about this. You know what? Everything you're saying sounds encouraging and generally irrational, which makes me suspect you're a complete lunatic, but one thing is bothering me, Esmeralda said. "Why us?" "It's hard for me to answer, to be honest. To call it a premonition would be extremely idiotic, but to put it simply, that's what it comes down to. Besides, I heard you were planning some sort of expedition, so I figured it would be a good time and place to find some companions. I hope this explanation, although crude, satisfies you. Well, be that as it may, but what you want to do is extremely mad. Let me put it this way. The decision is only up to you. If you refuse, I will find someone else and make my dream come true. It will be done either you come with me or someone else. Do you really want to be left out of this, miss the opportunity, and don't see this glorious moment with your own eyes? I offer you world fame and unlimited magical prospects. Of course, we will not flaunt our success in a public forum, walking proudly with our noses in the clouds, but everyone will know. to whom they owe all the benefits that follow our success. Just think, the saints will fall to their knees and their terror over people will end. There will be equality and justice again. Don't you want this? Everyone just nodded uncertainly, even though, like every human being, they also dreamed of such a turn of events. Their fears subsided reluctantly. I'm tired of hiding, Birmo suddenly said angrily. My whole life in the underground, as an orphan with fingers pointed at me. If what you say is true, you can count on me to go with you. Veronica too. That's true? Esmeralda asked. Yes. I'm fed up with this life. I have read almost all of Vincent's books, and I know that the trail he followed has never failed him. I believe him. Thank you, Vincent said, smiling kindly at her. And you? Esmeralda hesitated before answering. How can you make such a decision in an instant? She was about to refuse when she felt an overwhelming feeling of revulsion within her. She remembered how crudely and unfairly fate had treated her and how many times she had screamed at the top of her lungs into her pillow to release the unbearable feeling of powerlessness. How many times did she want to take revenge on people filled with ignorance? She ran away and fought desperately for every day spent in peace. Almost every day she gritted her teeth with rage, as she did now, sitting with friends and with a stranger who wanted to change her future. She finally made the confession Vincent expected. I will join, if it will change the situation we have been in for years. I also want to, Tamur suddenly blurted out. If Esmeralda is going, I am going too. There was silence for a moment, and Tamur smiled shyly as he realized that he must have gotten too excited. Esmeralda broke the silence. You know, I would think it was sweet if you weren't just going for his money just a moment ago. A giant turned red with shame. But I... Okay, don't explain yourself anymore, silly. I'm not angry. The girl reassured him, stroking his arm vigorously. Then we have one person left, Vincent noted, and everyone focused on Omen. Do I have a choice? The boy replied calmly, slowly raising his head. You can stay. If you knew that red-haired woman as well as I do, you wouldn't talk like that, believe me, Omen informed him, giving him a full smile this time. She would drill a hole in my stomach until I agree. Great! Vincent was happy. Now that we are set, let's get straight to the point. What do you say? Without waiting for any answer, he took a bulging purse full of coins from the inside pocket of his jacket and placed it in the middle of the table. A small advance to prove my sincerity. Esmeralda untied the golden string, looked inside, and widened her eyes at the sight of the gold. Well, let's continue listening, boss, she said sarcastically. Here's what we do. In 3 days, we will meet at the inn here in Dijon. We will ride from there on horses straight to Calais. There we will change to camels and head for the city of Sergia. I will tell you the rest on the way. I will provide all the equipment. You only take what you need. And I'm not talking about comfortable bedding or a sketchbook to paint landscapes, but about drinks, food, and similar things. And you think no one will catch us? Veronica asked. Of course not. Where do you get that confidence? I told you. I have a friend among the saints. No one asked him about the details of how they will retrieve the sword or about this mysterious ally in the order. Instead, they spent some more time talking about Vincent's other expeditions, and then everyone went their separate ways to get ready to go. During this time, neither of them found peace. Doubts mounted, but no one thought of giving up. Everyone wanted to change not only their lives, but also the fate of everyone around them. They were fed up with constant hiding and discrimination. 3 days later, they all mounted horses provided by the men Vincent called accomplices and rode south towards the Calais desert. The expedition may not have been difficult, but it was mercilessly long for the travelers. What was particularly troublesome was the fact that they could not travel on open roads. The first Saint patrol they would encounter would cause them quite a bit of trouble. Everyone knew what they were doing to people like them, vagabonds, hiding and questioning their divine word. Fortunately, Vincent was able to tell with incredible accuracy when the roads were clear, and when he had to avoid patrols and unwanted onlookers. When asked how he did it, he only told Veronica, "I have a talent for it." The guide became more and more taciturn day by day. The closer they got to their destination, the greater the sense of dread that gripped their hearts. The silence and boredom were becoming more and more noticeable. Even Esmeralda stopped paying attention and asking questions. She had doubts that did not leave her even for a moment. It might have seemed that Omen had agreed to go for her sake, but the truth was, if he had refused, she wouldn't have had a second thought and stayed with him. The other three were sure of what they were doing, or at least they seemed so. Omen was silent almost the entire time, as usual. But Esmeralda knew she could talk to him, and he would calm her down, like he always did, like no one else. One night, unable to sleep because of all her thoughts, she lay down next to him, on the bed, in the middle of a small forest. The silence was broken only by the barely audible rustling and singing of birds, and the starry sky hung above them, bringing a feast to their eyes. She just wanted to talk to him, to take her mind off the Reaper and the tense atmosphere. Tell me a story, she said calmly in a pleading voice. What? I don't know. Whatever, please. If someone wants to tell their story through me, then why not? After a while, Omen began to tell a tale of a couple who got lost in this forest. The lovers decided to run away from their family, which did not agree to their relationship, and they lost their way, which forced them to spend the night in this place. He couldn't even say how they died, when he noticed that Esmeralda had fallen asleep on his shoulder, smiling. The next day she felt stupid and turned everything into a joke. He probably bored her with his story, and that's why she fell asleep. However, she was only ashamed of herself in front of the other members of the expedition. When she traveled only with Omen, something like this had happened to her more than once. Over the years they had known each other. However, there was no time for shame or talking about unimportant things that day. That day, they would see the landscape that was the last thing the Reaper and the angel he fought against saw. That day, they were heading towards solving their problems once and for all. This prospect gave everyone even more food for thought, and silenced them once again. Only Vincent was thinking aloud, describing what he was going to do once they stole the sword. He even mentioned something about overthrowing the saints, but he quickly corrected that it was about their influence on people, not the destruction of the entire organization. The desert of Khaled and Madaris, which after 1200 years have been waiting for the discovery of its dark secrets, stood before them, and within it was the incarnation of the demonic god of death, waiting for the first pair of eyes to look upon him. Thank you for listening, my beautiful souls. If you liked it, please leave a subscription, and again, comment if you have any questions or doubts or suggestions, maybe even, and I will answer all of them in the next video. Bye bye.